Matilda Raynolds, if that music was my alarm clock, I would be bouncing out of bed and I would not eat coffee. It's the ProVelo Road to the World Tour.
That is such a good idea. I'd be ready to run through a wall, I think, if I heard that music in my 5:15 alarm at the moment, trying to get training done in Melbourne. But yeah, it gets you excited. It just really reminds you of just such great racing, but also so many great races that we sort of missed because of the coverage. And there's some huge names that's shown in that as well. And I think that's just what we're loving so much with the ProVelo Super League is the coverage and the names and the stories that it's creating. And no bigger story, Matt, than the doozy that is the Spirit of Tasmania. The Spirit of Tassie and the tour down there has just produced some of the biggest names. I saw the post that SBS produced today. Huge historic names have won this event.
Yeah, it's been a launching pad for a lot of great careers. Cadel Evans famously, this was the race in 98 when he won it. And the prognosis was this guy could challenge for Grand Tours. We've seen Sarah Gigante in the thick of the action and winning the Tour of Tassie as well. And now she's finishing the top 10 at the Tour de France. But it's a race, Tills, that has been a big part of the Praties team, as it was way back some 25 years ago. This year, they're celebrating their 25th anniversary. So our last guest on the show today is Andrew Christie-Johnston. Created the team, still owns the team, runs the team. The reason he's last is I don't want to have to rush through him. I want to be able to have a good chat with Andrew about the history of the team.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just with ACJ, there's been no one who's produced more particularly male superstars in cycling than himself. You rattle off names like Chris Hamilton, Ben O'Connor, and even in more recent times, Matt Dinham. And the names keep going, Jack Haig, etc. And of course, Richie Port, which we've got to talk to him about, who just still speaks so highly of ACJ and just what they provided and the pathway for these guys.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to work out who's the ducks of the class. Is it Richie Port? Ben O'Connor? Ben's not finished yet. Great to have Wendy Superman with us. Wendy, here's who we've also got coming up. We're going to have a chat to Angus Calder. Angus is going to be joining us regularly throughout the ProVelo Super League. He used to ride for the St. George Continental team, and he's now going to be working with us and making his predictions on the riders to really watch in this round. And then when we review it, some of the things that we look forward to, well, maybe caught us by surprise. We're catching up with Frankie Hall. We've already spoken to Frankie Hall because she's been in transit all day long. So we'll hear from Frankie Hall. She was second at the Women's Warrnambool Classic. She rides for the Praties team. But first up, we're going to talk to Jack Ward. Before we get to Jack, let's take a look at the leaderboard, starting with the summer men's leaderboard. And at the top of the table, in the first 4 positions, it's riders from Team Brennan. And then they've got another 2 still inside the top 8. Of the top 8, Tills, there are 6 riders from Team Brennan leading the way, Blake Agnoletto. It's then Jack Ward, who we're going to speak to shortly. Brendan Davids, Tynan Shannon then interrupts it in 4th position. Hamish McKenzie, who won't be able to ride the entire league, I assume. He's got commitments in Europe with the Green Edge Development Squad. Cameron Scott, Luke Burns, and Tristan Saunders. Team Brennan are dominating, Tills.
Yeah, and Jack's the only under 23 in that list that we see there as well, Matt. But also they are reminding me of sort of like a Team Sky there. They are like a python, like boa constricting that peloton. And so they've got a lot of options, which is what you really need for the parkour that is Tassie, because no matter what, the Spirit of Tasmania down there, it is hard. Like you can't win this race. You can't get through this race without it being one of the hardest races you'll do all year.
Here's a look at the JCO under 23 classification. Jack Ward leads comfortably ahead of Hamish McKenzie. Then Julian Baudry, who we didn't see him in action in the Warnie. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do down in Tasmania. And Zach Marriage, who's showing so much promise, is the current Australian under 23 time trial champion. And we have the under 19s. They're back in action this weekend. They couldn't race the Warnie because the Warnie is simply too long. And Connor Wright, with his ARA teammate, Ollie Jerovic, they're 2 riders that I think, given the length of the stages in Tasmania, I reckon they're going to be right in the thick of it.
Yeah, and they come in with so much confidence as well. You know, the way that they race that criterium, the SA kick it, they weren't afraid at all to take on the elites. And so I think they've been hungry. They watched the Melbourne to Warrnambool and they're keen to get into it. So really keen to see what the under 19s can do.
I know who knows a lot about the under-19s. It's a leader of the under-23 classification. That's Jack Ward. Why don't we bring him in and have a chat to Jack? Jack, firstly, before we get to you, let's talk about Team Brennan. 6 out of the top 8. It is officially a powerhouse.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy stuff. It's just like such a good team environment. Everyone's just kind of working for each other, and it's been amazing.
Is it hard though then to also work out, okay, who do we work for today?
Oh, sometimes, but it's kind of, we're all just kind of in it so that whoever, as long as one of us wins, then it's a good win. Like, we're all just kind of as stoked for each other, whoever wins it. Like, it's kind of, there wasn't really a set plan for the warning. It was just, as long as we can get the win, that's what we want.
Jack, your obviously your DS is the famous Tim Decker, the head coach of the gold medal winning TP team from the Paris Olympics. What have you learnt from him so far, and what words of wisdom has he imparted on you?
I think like how he's just like kind of he's really committed to the team, and he's like, you can see he's really passionate, and it kind of makes you more, just puts everyone in a good headspace about, there's no real pressure to, like, you want to perform, but it's not as long as you do all you can do, then it's like that's a good outcome, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, he's got lots of experience, and he knows that he's probably just focusing on the output, and the outcome will take care of itself. And when you've got the talent to work with, actually, he's not that good a coach. With that lineup from Team Brennan, I'd be able to get results.
I was laughing with you, Jack, on like how you guys sort of work out like who chases, because there's obviously such a strong team. But you sort of alluded to it before. But in terms of the priority, is it winning the race on the day, or is it trying to protect the under-23 jersey or the overall, or are you guys potentially, you've got to be careful of not trying to do too much?
I think it's trying to balance it all. Like, for the under-23, obviously I'm trying to be up there every race, but I also am trying to, like I got warning, I was trying to do some, like, help the team out, but also don't cook myself so I can still get some points on the day. But yeah, it's more about just trying to get the win every round if we can. I don't know, whatever works best for that.
So one of your teammates is challenging for the under-23 classification, the current under-23 Australian road champion, Julian Baudry. He's sitting in 3rd position, and I assume you've raced against him a lot, both on the mountain bike as well.
Yeah, for sure. Got raced him since we were probably under 15s or something on the mountain bike. So it's really cool to see him get the win at Nationals. Yeah.
What are his strengths?
Oh, he's got a good TT on him. Like, it's pretty impressive. He's pretty new to it, and he did really well at Nationals, and I think he's also a really good climber. So I think Tassie will suit him. That'll be cool to see. I reckon we'll have a strong team.
How about another one of the mountain bikers from the under-19s, leader of that classification, Connor Wright? Give us your thoughts on him and what you expect from him in Tassie.
He's a very impressive rider. Like, it's crazy how good he is. I think for sure Tassie will, especially the stage 2 with that really steep, punchy climb, I reckon he'll do well. It'll be cool to see how he goes.
Yeah, I honestly overlooked Julian Baudry before because he wasn't at Melbourne to Warrnambool. But as you say, he had an incredible ride at Nationals. He's a part of the Bright Alpine Cycling Club. So you know that he's, training up in Bright, going to be confident in that area. But one thing I want to know from you, Jack, is how do you balance the mountain biking with your road cycling and balancing the two disciplines?
It's a bit difficult sometimes, but it's kind of trying to make sure I still kind of do the big goals on each, and then everything else kind of works itself out. Like, I'm skipping Grafton for national champs because that's a big goal to hopefully get the title there. But most of the time I just try do a lot of racing and see if I can do well at both.
So skipping Grafton to focus on the national championships for mountain biking, which has obviously been a big part of your career so far. Before we let you go and move on to focusing on the women's race for the Tour of Tassie, rapid fire questions on your sporting background. What other sports did you play as a kid?
I did some footy, some cricket, Did a bit of swimming when I was really young. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Position in football?
Oh, like wing, I reckon was probably favourite. I played there a lot.
Yeah, pretty good engine tills. I imagine you just kept chasing, went all day long. How old were you when you first started racing, and what got you into it?
I think I was probably about 12 or 13 because my dad, like, we'd been riding just locally, and I was like passing like some older guys like in their 20s or whatever. So it was like, oh, surely he's going to do some well at racing. And then I just got into some local stuff and did well. So it's just started from there.
Started from there, and it's just getting going. Got great momentum. Good luck on the weekend in Tasmania.
Thank you.
Well, Jack Ward is definitely going to be one of the favourites for the Spirit of Tasmania Cycle Tour. And you can imagine that as a 12-year-old, and I just was passing some older guys. The blokes in their 20s. That's not old, Tills.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But yeah, it gets me excited, Matt. I'd love to see Julian Baudry and Jack Ward going off together, and we could have like a Demi Vollering versus Lotte Kopecky, sort of Strade Bianchi at the end there. And so they're two really strong climbers. And I think if they get up the road together, then it's game on. But yeah, just got a lot of options there. But it's I'm really excited as well, as you mentioned, with Connor Wright and some of the juniors that are going to be there. This is a huge opportunity for them, and the director sportifs of these teams are really going to be watching who performs at Tassie, because really it's the first round that we've got that's been really hilly.
Yeah, and those three riders that we've spoken about a lot in that conversation, Jack Ward, Julian Baudry and Connor Wright, the foundation for them in the sport is mountain biking. And so let's watch this space. Let's turn our attention now to the women's. It's the SBS Women's Leaderboard that we now get a chance to take a look at. Talia Appleton is on top, and this is tight, Tills. It's just 1 point between Appleton and Nicholson after the warning.
Yeah, and we spoke to Caitlin Nicholson last week, and she really made it quite clear her intentions that she does want to try to get on a pro team next year, and so this is really important for her. And I think, yes, she's not able to win the go for the Livalula Conti contract with the development team, but that doesn't mean that she can't put this on her resume, take it to some really big teams, and take it over to Europe. It'll be a huge notch in her belt if she can get there. But certainly, there's been quite a bit of criticism for Praties and how they rode the Melbourne to Warney that we're going to speak to Angus about. But yeah, she's certainly surrounded. But the benefit of Tasmania is that sometimes numbers don't play into it. Sometimes because the parkour is so hard, it'll be the strongest riders will be able to get up the road.
Yeah, and obviously we're a little bit biased, but it's fantastic to have SBS supporting the women's section of the ProVelo Super League. And SBS is making a big investment in women's cycling and extending that further this year with the coverage that we're going to be getting from the races in Europe. The under 23s, well, this is the men's that we're looking at the moment. For the women's, it's Talia Appleton who sits on top in that classification. And she looks like she is in the box seat to be able to take it all the way through. I know we're only 2 rounds into the league and there's still 4 to go, but I think she's going to be tough to beat for the under 23 category. She's going to be tough to beat outright.
Yeah, and I think this round suits her more than any other. Yes, she had that Wollonga stage win, but certainly for down in Tassie, this is what she's been most focused on, and this is where she really wants to solidify her lead, because there's a few other rounds that probably don't suit her as well. And I've seen on her Strava that she's been, in that Mansfield area, and certainly doing a lot of climbing. And we all know that she's an extremely intelligent individual. She was really targeting, this is her ticket, into the world tour. And yeah, she's absolutely going after it, which is why she passed up the opportunity to ride at the Tour Down Under. Yeah,
so we've got Talia Appleton at the top ahead of 2 of her teammates, Sophie Ma and then Sophia Salmons. Ellie Anderson from Butterfield Zip Track Racing in 4th position. Then we have Mia Williams, Savannah Copeland, Belinda Bailey, and in 8th position, Kirsty Watts, the Kiwi who won the national time trial title recently in New Zealand.
Yeah, and who I'm most excited to see as well, Matt, who's not on that list, is Alyssa Pilates, of course, who rode Queen of the Mountain at the Tour Down Under, and then unfortunately suffered a concussion from a crash at Cadell's, and so she had to have the warning off, which she was devastated about. And they are coming in with Kirsty Watts, and of course Keely Bennett, who we announced last week as well, is joining that Meridian cycling team. So that's really exciting, and keen to see her back.
Yeah, and for the under-19s, it's Hannah Giannatti who leads that classification. It's then Tully Schweitzer in second position, Anna Dubier is in third place, Neve Paslow in fourth position, and Amelie Sanders rounds out the top five. And again, a little bit like in the men's outright with Brennan, the under-19s for the women's, it's dominated by ARA, which has completely shifted its focus this year.
Yeah, and that's not surprising that they're dominating because they come from such a hugely strong foundation with ARA. But I think what's exciting with that, Matt, is that it's not just a race within the under-19s. They're going to be racing with the under-23s and the elites. So I think that'll bring so much more dynamics to it, and they'll actually be able to work as a team to try to get the best rider up the road.
One of the riders that's going to be in the thick of the action, we caught up with her earlier today because she was in transit and she didn't know what time it was, is Frankie Hall from the Praties team. Let's hear from her now. We're joined by Frankie Hall, who's just landed in Australia. But Frankie, where do we find you?
I'm in Melbourne at the moment. I fly to Devonport tomorrow morning at 8 a.m.
All right, so getting ready for the Spirit of Tasmania tour. But before that, let's cast our mind back to the Warnie. We managed to finish in second spot, but I heard that you were a bit unwell moments after going across the finish line.
Yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that, but yeah, I was pretty empty on the line there. I had pushed pretty hard throughout the whole race and didn't really anticipate to be in that position at the end, so had to dig pretty deep to salvage that. And yeah, felt a little sick after that, but all good now.
And on that race, we had the velo phone on you. What was the experience like? Although we could only get across to you once because of the poor coverage, what was the experience like of having the velo phone on throughout the race?
It's real cool. It's real cool to be able to engage with people watching the race as well. I think it's pretty unique. I don't know of anywhere else or any other races where, obviously other than with the first round in Adelaide, but any other races where you've actually been able to communicate live to within the peloton. And yeah, I think it will give the viewers a pretty cool insight, because what you see isn't always kind of what's going on and what you see on TV. So yeah, hearing from within the bunch is quite novel, but yeah, I think it's a great idea. It's wicked for bringing it to the viewers as well.
You've come from England, obviously. You've been on the DAS team there, done a few races there in Europe. What's your perception of the level that you're experiencing at the moment in the ProVelo League?
It's real high level. I've been really pleasantly surprised with how the races are raced. There's so much more organization within the teams, and the way that everyone races to a much higher, I wouldn't necessarily say a higher standard. Like the strength and depth in Europe and in the UK domestically is high too, but yeah, just the structure of racing here, it's so much more professional. The variety of races and the infrastructure behind the domestic races is so impressive. The things that are coming out with this, with the ProVelo Super League, it just feels really well organized. It's a real pleasure to race, and we've had some variety in the courses, locations. My family are like, so where are you exactly? And I'm like, oh, I don't really know. Somewhere in Australia. I'll go to the next round. But yeah, no, it's real professional. The standard's real high, and it's really, really cool to be able to race. I think I'm especially lucky with the girls that I've got on the team. Although a lot of them are quite young, they're pretty experienced. So it's really nice to race with them and be able to ride together as a team.
Now, you're part of the Praties team, which is actually a Tasmanian team. So this is a hometown race that you're coming into. Curious if you know any of that history. We're going to have Andrew Christie-Johnston on later in the show, who is the founder of the Praties team, and which is where he's from, which is why the license is based out of Tassie. Do you know any about that history? But then also, have you heard much about the racing in Tassie and what to expect this weekend?
I think this is the race that really attracted me to the series. I look at the kind of profile of especially the two road races, and it just makes me happy to see some elevation, and especially that stage 4 finish. I absolutely love riding and racing in that kind of terrain. So, yeah, I've done quite a lot of work looking into the courses that we're riding this week, and then they'll be pleased to know that I have since learned that I don't actually need a different visa to come to Tasmania, which was the running joke of the team, that they tried to get me, and it took me a good few days of googling, because when I googled it, do I need a visa to go to Tasmania, of course I do, if I was going straight there, but I think everybody found that quite funny, but no, it's I know that it's got a big meaning for the team, so really excited to get stuck in, and hopefully we can deliver and give back something for what ACJ has been providing to riders across Australia for 25 years and beyond, I'm sure.
And Frankie, just as well, just with you guys have, the Praties team has at least like 4 riders in the top 10. How is that for how you manage that and individual goals and your approach into this weekend?
I think that's, to be honest, a complete byproduct of how we've been racing. Obviously, we've got the overall GC in mind and individual targets, but ultimately it's a bike race, and each individual round and each individual stage is a bike race, and we want to win. And you just race to win whatever you're racing, and that's what comes of it. You have got to keep GCs and overall things in mind, but I think we're here to race. We're here to demonstrate that we've got such strength and depth in the team, and can kind of compete in each of the rounds across all different terrains. And yeah, we'll see what comes out the other side.
Another team, Frankie, that looks really strong is the Meridian Blue team, and they've recruited Keely Bennett. They've got Alyssa Pilates back as well, and Watts, who won the time trial across the New Zealand National Championships. They're going to be tough to contend with. Who do you see as your big rivals?
Yeah, I think they've definitely brought some strength into their team. But also, obviously, we can't underestimate Butterfields. Caitlin had an absolute stonking ride last at Warney, and she can climb as well. And there's a lot of strength in the support in that team too. A couple of individuals as well, and different teams. I don't think anyone can ever be underestimated. So yeah, it's about being aware of what's going on, and just bringing the best game that we can.
Oh, we can't wait to see it all kick off. It starts on Friday with the Criterium. There's the road race on Saturday, the time trial in the afternoon, mountaintop finish on Sunday. All the best with the continuing travels, and then for the race itself. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.
But Tills, we missed out on really hearing from Frankie with the velo phone in the morning, because when we tried to cross to her, she was in one of the black spots. And then when we could get to her, the race was too hectic. I want to put the velo phone on her for the crit.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we also missed, apparently, she brought up her lunch and everything that she had also eaten that morning at the finish line of the Warney. So just another example of just how difficult that event is. But yeah, really interesting to hear that one of the reasons that, she was so drawn to this event and the league is that what we're going to experience in Tassie with those stages.
Yeah, and we're going to catch up with Andrew Christie-Johnston shortly. Stick with us, because we're going to celebrate 25 years of the Praties team and all its various sponsors and the huge list of riders that have gone through that. Before we get to Andrew, though, we're going to catch up with Angus Calder, who's ridden National Road Series races. He's now covering the ProVelo Super League. Angus, how have you been enjoying the opening couple of rounds of the league?
I've been absolutely loving it so far. I think, coming from the NRS background, it was fantastic racing, very hard. There was a lot of exciting stuff happening, but as I'm sure a lot of people watching this will know, you used to go and race out sort of in country Australia. There wasn't too much coverage. No one really knew what was happening out there. And so I think now that we've got the ProVelo Super League, we've got access to all of these broadcasts. There's an incredible amount of content and media being produced, which is fantastic. I thought, now is a better time than ever to get involved, start covering it. And I think everyone has their niche within cycling. I always loved the strategic side of things. So I've tried to bring a bit of that into what I'm making, do a bit of that breakdown, that tactical analysis. And I've almost switched to becoming, I guess, like a cycling analyst, for lack of a better term.
You got one thing wrong with that sentence. Delete the word almost and just go with it. So you're much more recently in the peloton than myself, and Tills is still in the peloton. So I'm interested in your thoughts ahead of the Spirit of Tasmania cycle tour on a rider we need to watch in the men's race and a rider to watch in the women's race.
Yeah, I've had a good look through the start list, and I mean, there are so many riders, both men's and women's, who you could pick, who could win here. And I think trying to narrow it down to a single rider is very challenging. So no hard feelings to anybody who I've left off my list of one, unfortunately. But I think for the men's race, at least, he's been mentioned before. He's actually fifth currently in the under-23 standings. I'm going to pick Zach Marriage for the men's race for a couple of reasons. I think the types of stages that we've got overall, you start off with a crit, for the GC, if we're focusing on that here, you just need to not lose time there. Stage 2, which is the Sheffield road race, that's going to be really tough. And I think Zach had a great performance at the Melbourne to Warrnambool. He showed how strong he was there. I think he should be pretty capable getting through that one sort of hopefully pretty well on time. Stage 3, there was a time trial. It's short. It's only 4 kilometers, pan flat, but he's the under-23 time trial national champion. I think that sets him up really well for something like this. I don't expect we'll see big time gaps, but I think Zach will hopefully perform really well in this one. And then we come into what I assume is going to be the deciding stage, excuse me, the Golden Valley road race. So we've got a big climb to finish things off. Zach climbs fantastically well. I'm sort of comparing this one across the men's and the women's to Mount Buller down in Bright. And I think for someone like Zach, a really strong TT engine, I think that climb's actually going to suit him quite well. And I think if he's able to hang on to the likes of Jack Ward and a couple of the other stronger riders, Julian Baudry there, if he's managed to put a little bit of time into everyone on the TT, I think he should hopefully be in a pretty good stead.
Angus, there were 2 types of people that would do the Spirit of Tassie tour, which were myself, full of fear because of the climbs, and of course those who just would eat it up, like your Sarah Gigantes or some of the names that you've just mentioned there. Let's just have a look at 2 of the key stages, particularly what's going to have the biggest effect. Obviously, we've got the crit and the time trial, but the 2 road stages on stage 2, looking at my notes, we've got in the women's 1,600 meters of climbing in 100 kilometers. But get this, the last stage on stage 4, and we just heard Frankie Hall refer to it then, we've got 1,700 meters in 80 kilometers, but that 1,700 meters comes pretty much in the last 20 kilometers. So it's all flat and then it kicks off. But the other thing that people overlook in Tassie, and you've raced there as well, Angus, is the wind. So this is actually crosswind central. And that's where I'm wondering your thoughts around where the team tactics could really play into it as well. And I loved your video that you produced this week off the Warnie about what's harder, climbing or crosswinds.
Yeah, it's very challenging. They obviously both have completely different dynamics. And the Tour of Tassie is known as a climbing race. It's had a big summit finish for many past editions. And I think I put out an article as well today just talking about how good an indicator it is for people who might perform well in sort of, big climbing stage races over in Europe. But I completely agree. Tassie's a really tough place to ride your bike. I think that stage 2 road race, it's rolling hills all day. That's going to be really tough. You have to worry about the wind. Same thing with the lead into that climb as well on stage 4. And we've seen it happen before when we finished up Poatina, crosswind splitting that race before you even get to the climb. So it's all well and good to say on paper, this person's a great climber, but can you even get to the bike, get to the climb at the front of the bike race in a position to win? That's sort of a different question. And I think if we're looking at that and it is a really windy stage, look, Team Brennan, it's very hard to go past them. They've shown on multiple occasions how strong they are in the wind. They did it at the SA Kickett. They did it again at the Warnie, just separating the bunch. They seem to be the team completely in control. And I don't expect this race to be any different. But I think, again, I am going to back my man, Zach Marriage here. I think he put in a good ride at the Warnie, and I think he'll take a lot of confidence into this one. And I think as well, he needs to start bringing back a few of those points to get into with a fighting chance for the under-23 classification. We mentioned as well that we saw Jack Ward's going to miss out on the Grafton Twin Varel. So he's going to miss a round. And if we call Zach Marriage as missing a round, he only did sort of half of the SA Kickett. If he puts in a good showing here, I'm going to call them a sort of loosely equal standings in terms of the number of rounds and the position they're in. So I actually think there's a lot at stake here for Zach, and I hope that helps him rise to the occasion and he puts that extra effort in. He's also got a strong team around him, and hopefully he can be right in the mix there.
It's shaping up to be a great battle, and the crosswinds and the team tactics are all important. We certainly saw that last year in the Tour Down Under with Sarah Gigante, leading to Wollonga. Without her teammates, she was gone. Her teammates got her there, and she won on Wollonga. So who are we looking for in the women's race?
Yeah, for the women's race, again, I was sort of back and forth in between who I pick. Again, do I go down if I'm picking a single person? Talia Appleton was the first person who came to mind. She's been performing fantastically well this league. She's obviously the league leader. She's going into a tour that suits her fantastically well. So she was the first person to come to mind, but I'm actually going to go with another Butterfields rider, Ali Anderson, for a couple of reasons. Similar to Zach, excellent time trialist, under 23 Australian TT champ. So similar sort of logic there going on with the time trial. But comparing her to Talia, and I understand a bit of time has passed since this, Ali won the Tour of Bright overall, which is probably the most comparable sort of tour that we have to the Tour of Tassie. She did really well on the big mountain stages there. She was ahead of Talia on the Mount Buller stage. And I think this stage, this sort of Golden Valley climb, like I was saying earlier, it's very tough. It's going to take them sort of 30, 40 minutes plus to get up here. But it's not quite as steep. I don't think it's quite as challenging as Mount Buller is. I think it favors someone who's slightly more time trial oriented. We've seen Ali Anderson is an excellent time trialist, so I think that maybe gives her a bit of a leg up. Obviously, you've got the team dynamic again. Praties incredibly strong. But I think the Butterfields team, they've shown that they've got a really strong team there, and they just need to get her up to the front. Sorry, Mount Buffalo.
So you've gone with two really good selections that are not the absolute favourites. So when you're looking at Ellie Anderson, what about her team to be able to be around? And when we look at the strength of the Meridian Blue team, and there's also the strength of the Praties team, the Butterfields team, and they've also got Caitlin Nicholson in there, who's actually 1 point behind the overall league lead.
Yeah, exactly right. So you've got Caitlin Nicholson, you've got Ali Anderson, Odette Lynch, I think is racing here as well, an excellent sprinter. They've had a couple of really strong performances, I think, as well. I did an analysis on their stage 2 criterium. They had a lead out that it was their first, I think, big lead out together for the crit there, and they managed to get a few things work. They managed to work on a few things and put it together in a really nice way for the stage 3 road race. So I think they're learning every race, and they're starting to dial that in really well as the league progresses, as they get to know each other well. Obviously, Caitlin Nicholson, incredibly strong. You would be a fool to not mention her in terms of one of the potential favorites. But if we're just naming one, I think Ali overall really, I think she's got all of the attributes to do really well here. And I would love to see the Butterfields team, put it all together, make sure that they get hopefully multiple options at the front of the race. We've got strong riders from Meridian Blue, from Praties, and I would really love to see, as just a spectator on the side of the road, I want to see a big battle. I don't want to see one person clean up. So hopefully we end up with multiple options and a lot to talk about afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like, Angus, that the talent is really well spread in the women's, particularly for this round, particularly with Alyssa Pilates returning and really seeing where, the climbing that she produced in the Tour Down Under, where does that sit when you sort of come back one step to the ProVelo Super League? But also I think Caitlin Nicholson, she could get really caught out in the crosswinds. One of her biggest challenges is sitting in the bunch and being able to be comfortable with her bunch skills. And I think that there's a huge amount of experience, though, even though they're so young, with Ali Anderson, done a huge amount of racing overseas, Alyssa Pilates and Talia being with Bridge Lane in Europe last year as well. Out of the three, though, you're still picking Ali Anderson, which I love, just for her time trialing ability. What do you think Alyssa Pilates needs to do because she still wants to go for that contract? She's very focused on getting that contract. What does she need to do to win this round?
I expect Alyssa to be right up the front there. I think she's shown this year that she's in incredible form. She's an excellent climber. I think for her, the difference is going to have to be made on that Golden Valley climb. If she can have a really strong ride up there, put a bit of extra time into everybody else, because my thinking there is if she can stay sort of around the mark through the crit, the stage 2 road race, the time trial, if she's pretty close by and she has an absolutely storming ride up Golden Valley, it's pretty much game over. So I think for her, a strong performance on stage 4, and she's got it in the bag.
All right, Angus, thanks for joining us. We're on Zach Marriage. We're on Ali Anderson. You're going to join us next week, and we're going to dissect it. And we're going to look at maybe the unsung hero of the race, somebody that wasn't necessarily at the top of the result sheet. Good to chat.
Looking forward to it.
I like that, Tills. He's gone for non-outright favourites, absolutely contenders. I agree. They were riders that I would have put into the mix, but not the absolute riders that you would necessarily select. Let's cut to a man who has won this race plenty of times as a sports director. This year, celebrating 25 years of Praties, Andrew Christie-Johnston is in the car, going to pick up riders, getting ready for the Spirit of Tasmania Cycling Tour. It never stops for you, Andrew.
Sorry, it just dropped out.
No, you're in the car at the moment, going to pick riders up for the race?
Yes. Yeah, just had to find a spot on the road to pull over. I'm actually running late, so that sort of sucks. But yeah, hopefully the plane is too.
Odds-on favourite, you'll be fine. So let's cut to the history of this team, now celebrating 25 years. Why did you start it? How did it get underway? And what about this footage of you 25 years ago?
Yeah, wow. I haven't seen that for a long time. Brings back some good memories, though. Look, I sort of started the team because there wasn't really any teams at all in Tasmania. There was just the Institute, and all the best riders went to the Institute. And I think, which was a natural thing to happen probably in all the states, but there was so much talent in cycling in Tasmania. So, yeah, I just decided to really put a bunch of guys together and give them an opportunity, and it sort of just grew from there. To start with, it was probably nearly a bunch of mates back in 2000. But yeah, it's been a long ride.
ACJ, so good to see. 25 years, names like Chris Hamilton, Jack Haig, Ben O'Connor, Richie Port, Matt Dinham, the list goes on. There hasn't been a bigger factory of producing men's Australian, world tour riders than what you were able to do over the 25 years. Out of that period, though, what were the biggest changes you saw through that period of being a DS and taking teams? You also took the Australian team a lot overseas as well. What were the biggest changes you saw?
There's so many changes over that period, but I'd say the biggest one was riders' age, actually. When we first started taking riders across to Europe, if you were outside of an under 23, you still had a reasonable chance of being able to be picked up, and then it sort of really had a under 23 focus, and probably more recently in the last couple of years, you started to see under 19 riders that teams are signing. So I'd say the biggest change is age, and it's probably because the nature of how young some of these Grand Tour winners have been, that everyone expects that they are going to miss out on talent if they don't choose them at a young age. But I don't know, Pogacar is young when he won, but does someone think another 19 or 20-year-old is going to replace him soon, or is he still going to be winning at 30 plus? So yeah, but that's the biggest change I've seen.
So then, given your experience with the team, and I think of Richie Port when I'm asking this question, are some of the World Tour teams potentially missing out on big talents and big opportunities?
Yeah, most definitely. I think that if you look at just such a small age group, and you're all focused on that, then you're going to miss talent that just takes a little bit longer to develop. Like Richie, I'm not sure the exact age that he went professional, but probably around 25. They wouldn't even look at his resume at 25 now. And there's been plenty, Jack Haig was still in the under 23s, but towards the end. And yeah, I think that if they just focus on that under 19 age group, they're going to miss a lot of talent.
ACJ, what's your perception so far of the ProVelo Super League, and how does it feel to have it coming into your backyard? Are you guys already singing that it's coming home, or?
Yeah, look, it's certainly fantastic to get back into my home state. I love the mountains and I love the challenges of the Tour of Tasmania, so it's got a great history. But the first time with ProVelo, and it's a new concept, and I've seen a lot of changes in Australian cycling since I've been doing it for, well, more than 25 years, but I've had my own for 25 years. And the series to date, I didn't get to go to Melbourne to Warrnambool, but what I saw in Adelaide was a new standard, a new level, and it's really exciting, actually. At one stage, it looked like things in Australia were starting to go backwards, but I think what Matt Wilson has, the plan he's put together in this series is just going to be fantastic. It's just super professional, and it's really pleasing that the riders have got such great opportunities, to race for, and what a bonus being able to, to sign with Australia's own World Tour team, both men and women.
Well, we're really excited about the team that you've got on the road at the moment. You don't have a men's team, but you do have a women's team. And we've seen that long list of riders that have gone to World Tour. Tell us a bit about your process of selecting riders for the team, making that decision of, okay, this rider fits with our culture and we think that she can go to the top.
Yeah, look, for me, it's changed throughout the years as well. There's no doubt we definitely look at a lot of numbers based. And that's probably the focus to start with, and then after that you I suppose pick up the phone, speak to them, see what their passion is for the sport, maybe explain some of the challenges. I like people to know what they're getting themselves into in this sport. It's pretty tough, and being based in Australia, you've got to pack bags and go to Europe if you want to be a professional. But a big thing for me has always been about balance as well. Having some mature riders with experience that can help some of the younger ones progress. And I think that balance in our team at the moment is really good. And I'll always keep a mix of experienced riders. They bring stability to the team. It's easier for me to relate to them because they're a little bit closer to my age, even though they're probably still half my age. That's certainly a little bit easier than speaking to a 16 or 17-year-old. But no, I think I've got a really nice mix. Nothing's probably changed in the process so much, but it's hard to know what you think will click, and at times, sometimes you get a little bit wrong. But I think with the ladies that I met in Adelaide, look, we've got a fantastic bunch of girls, and I'm really looking forward to working for them for the rest of this series.
ACJ, a quarter of a century. What's been some of your favourite standout moments?
Oh, I was wondering whether you're going to say that. Look, there is so many, to be honest, and some of them were within the team, and some are just watching the guys in Europe that have been on this team. But if I was to choose a defining moment, and it was a long time ago, it would have been Richie's Port win in the Tour of Tasmania. We weren't really expected to be the favourites for our home race, and I think it was super tough. That was back when it was 7 days, and we had a mixture of really tough crosswind days, and it finished up Paotina. And I think that one stands out. It was like, I think we got a bit of respect from that day onwards. So that's probably the highlight.
One of my fondest memories of you and your team is the same year, and it was the Herald Sun Tour. It was the stage to Mount Buller. CSC were there. It was Stuart O'Grady in the yellow jersey. There was a breakaway with Chris Yongerwood. Chris Froome was in the race as well with Barlow World. And there were some big teams in the race then. And it was your team that went on the front to try and shake it up. No, Richie didn't win the stage, but that set the tone for your team for the rest of its existence.
Yeah, for sure. I do remember that. I was always believed that we had to respect the professional riders, but at the same time, if we weren't willing to compete with them at the front of the race, then, you know, we had no hope. So we had a lot of belief in Richie, and looking back at that, I think Chris Froome with Barlow back then, I think maybe they finished 5th and 6th in the Tour or something like that overall, and then a few years later they're both teammates and pretty well dominated the Tour de France for a period of time. So yeah, it's special. But I suppose another one for the Herald Sun Tour would be Nathan Haas winning the Herald Sun Tour against the World Tour teams. As soon as he had that in the bag, there was 3 World Tour teams came straight up to us and were keen to sign him. So yeah, the Herald Sun Tour has been kind to us.
And you've been kind to Australian cycling. Congratulations on everything that you've achieved, and we hope there's plenty more still to come. Well done, mate.
Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on board.
And Tills, you got to ride on the team last year.
Yeah, definitely. And I, would have loved even more interaction with ACJ. But I just think, Matt, who do we need to write to get this guy into the Hall of Fame of cycling? And I think cycling is made up of so many individuals that will always, who have given more than they'll ever take back. And so I think that's ACJ, what he's given to Australian cycling. He spent a huge chunk of his life away from his family with, and so I just think he's such a legend of the sport, and I think so many riders owe their careers to him.
Yeah, who do we write to? I'm on the committee. It's for me. I'll consider that an application.
Didn't know that.
Absolutely brilliant.
That.
Okay, Spirit of Tasmania Cycle Tour. It starts on Friday. It finishes on Sunday. We're going to have live coverage on SBS of the Criterium on the Friday. We're going to be joined by Sarah Gigante in commentary for the women's race, Cyrus Monk for the men's race. I can't wait, Tills.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. We can see there just some of the footage. Start praying for wins on Friday night in Tassie. So they're going to line it out straight there on the water. It's going to be lined out into the finish, and it's just going to be a really explosive few days. And looking forward to catching up with Cyrus Monk and Sarah Gigante again.
Hope you're all enjoying the ProVelo Super League. We are not quite halfway through. The Spirit of Tasmania cycle race will get us halfway there. Follow us on all the socials, post comments as well, and encourage your friends to join in and watch until Friday with the first stage of the Spirit of Tasmania Cycle Tour. See you later.
See you then.